Mute that TV. All right, I'm Angel Ellis with Muskogee Media. We're coming to you with Jason Salzman, Press Secretary of Muskogee Creek Nation. He's been making time for us for a weekly press briefing, and he's going to answer some questions with us today. Welcome, Jason. How are you doing? How are you hanging in there?
Thank you so much, Angel. Very good, and hope you all are well. It's good to see you guys as it is each week, and excited to be able to share some things with you and answer any questions that you may have on what's been an eventful day.
All right, I'm doing pretty good. I have my work from home colleagues who I might submit to HR here in a little bit, but other than that, doing great. I kid, they're great. So I just wanted to first start off with a little recap of our last week, like we always do. We kind of like dive into what happened last week. I think I've seen some new changes in personnel rules and things like that. HR kind of things. We got maternity leave at the tribe now. You want to give us the recap on those topics?
Yeah, we're so excited to not only roll that out for one of two reasons. For one, it's a wonderful thing for our expectant Muskogee mothers. This is an administration that it really wants to highlight women, especially in leadership positions, and as well as our expectant mothers that are having to work and in the past have felt like kind of maybe needed to save up leave or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We had here in our executive office Whitney Mayhew, an employee. She's been an employee for quite some time, but she basically had a conversation with Chief at the beginning of his administration and said, look, I've done some research on my own. I've seen that we don't do this here. There's only one tribe actually that does this, and I want us to be the second. And Chief Hill took that to heart, and we got with HR, and we were able to take actually a proposal from Miss Mayhew about what that would look like and what the model would look like and what she did in her research. Took it to HR, got it drafted up, and now we have a maternity leave policy, and we've also returned the donated sick leave policy that was also canceled. So we're excited about those two things because one, it's great for our expectant mothers, like I said, and two, in a time of uncertainty where there's a lot of sickness and there's a lot of tough choices having to be made by employees, we just didn't want there to be another tough choice on top of that. So we wanted to alleviate a little bit of that concern and bring back the donated sick leave. And we think that's a great program. And we're so happy to not only do those things that help those people that I talked about, but it's another example of the fact that we're not letting COVID-19 stop this nation. We're still about the business of this tribe, taking care of things that need to be taken care of, even in the midst of this chaos and crisis.
That's wonderful news to hear on so many levels, really. One of them that I think is really going to be beneficial for the tribe to have those kind of policies in place is when you start talking about attracting the right personnel. Those benefits really do add up in the long term and affect people's decisions on where they want to work. So when you talk about, attracting those people who are great fits for the job, you got to offer them those kind of things. And I kind of was a little surprised to hear that not more tribes have maternity leave as part of their policy, especially given the role that women have in the tribe, and that kind of was a little bit of a shocker to know that we had gone so long without it. But it's nice to see it stepping up into that kind of a place where you foster those kind of family values and stuff like that. Yeah. People really care about that. It will give you lots of leverage when you are staffing people. So
yeah, and I think I like the way that you asked that question because it allows me to highlight the fact that this is a chief and an administration that wants to recruit, that wants to attract the best employees that we possibly can. And that means this chief is taking a look at everything in our HR from the top down, meaning we're looking at our wage and salary schedule, how we compensate employees, how they're incentivized with that pay, how our employees are even achieving pay. Are they properly being evaluated? Is there paperwork to match that evaluation and the way that it's supposed to be in policy and in law and everything like that? And are we also doing the things like you said, incentivizing in the benefits that we provide, in the leave that we provide for people that absolutely need it? Um, and looking at the way that we actually hire people. Are we doing a good job with our interview process? Is it does it check every box as far as the way you're supposed to properly be vetting and bringing in talent? So we're
Mhm.
doing all of that. So thanks for the question, because it allows me to highlight what this chief and what this administration actually cares about in our HR and in our hiring practices.
And with the policy of sharing leave, for those who, come up with a situation where they have long-term illness or something and people can share their excessive leave that they might have with them, I think that really fosters that community spirit that tribes are,
Yeah.
really entrenched in, and it shows even in the corporate office kind of environment. So that's good to see. Um, we had a really eventful day. I just a few hours ago watched our governor hold a press conference, and the state of Oklahoma's governor holding a press conference about tribal gaming. And I don't know if it's a topic that you can really dive into, but we saw the Oto Missouri tribe and the Comanche tribe signing what looked like a gaming compact with the state of Oklahoma. And the governor had stated that his approach to this is going to be an individual tribe negotiation. He wants nothing to do with, it seems, collective bargaining. And he really kind of came off as a almost like a union buster in this press conference, is what I kind of observed. And I wanted to just give you the opportunity to weigh in if you can. I know that there is pending mitigation going right now in the courts, and that there's a gag order. So I'm not sure how the governor is able to do the press conferences, but that's a topic on the table for you if you choose.
Yeah, Angel, I will just say, in respecting litigation and respecting the lawsuit, um, of course, we can't go into too much, but I will say this. I do want to reference the chairman of the Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association, Matthew Morgan. He has released a statement, and I'd like to share that with you all. And that statement is, quote, "We respect the sovereignty of each tribe to take what action it believes it must on behalf of its citizens. All the same, Governor Stitt does not have the authority to do what he claims to have done today. Without the engagement of the Oklahoma legislature, he has entered agreements based on a claim of unilateral state authority to legalize sportsbook, to revamp the Oklahoma lottery, and to authorize new gaming facilities in Norman and Stillwater, amongst other places. That's simply not the law. I expect tribal and state officials are now reviewing the documents he released today and trying to understand what exactly it is Governor Stitt is trying to do. But at the end of the day, I suspect his actions have not helped matters for anyone." End quote. Again, that's a statement that we got from Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association's chairman, Matthew Morgan. I will tell you this: the second chief and Chief Hill watched the press conference together, and the chief wanted to release this statement. He says, "We believe in the sovereignty of tribes, and they have the right to do what's best for them. As for the Muskogee Creek Nation, we are as united for Oklahoma as we've ever been." And so we'll leave it at that. And and as the governor said, or as you said as well, today in the governor's comments, he said that this is a compact that's just for the Oto, just for the Comanche, individually, has nothing to do with any of the other tribes, and we could not agree with that anymore. So that's all I have to say about it.
Absolutely. I think oh I think we might have somebody weighing in.
Sure.
So I think the question was, why hasn't there been any press conference from, now what was it? Ah,
Okay.
so why hasn't there been any representation from tribes on the mayor's recently reopening of the economy in Tulsa? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, the question is that there's been a reopening of the economy committee established for the city of Tulsa. and the mayor there, GT Bynum. And the question is, how come there hasn't been any tribal representation on that committee, or in the least hasn't been made public that there is any tribal representation on that committee? Jared, do I have that right? Okay. To answer that question, I can't answer that question for the other tribes, but I can answer the fact for the Muskogee Creek Nation. I can answer the question for the Muskogee Creek Nation. This nation, um, since we've been dealing with COVID-19, has not heard anything officially or had any contact from or with the mayor of Tulsa. We haven't been requested to be on anything, and we haven't been a party to any of those discussions or any of those decisions to have a committee or anything like that. I imagine
So it
that we would
sounds like
entertain the idea if we were asked, but we haven't heard anything on that. We haven't heard from GT Bynum, Mayor GT Bynum, at all.
we would have to probably like speculate as to the reason, but it just seems like the offer has not been extended to the Muskogee Creek Nation at this time to sit on those.
And that's about all I could say. I don't want to speculate at all. I just know that the reason that we haven't been a party to that committee is because we haven't been a party to any communication or discussion of that committee whatsoever leading up to the formation of that committee, and that's just the simple fact of it. It's a good
So
question though.
it is a good question. Very good. And then when you think about like COVID-19 and closing of economies, the tribe's response to that early on was to form that task force, and they kicked it into high gear really quickly. And I think the tribe's taken it seriously. So had the offer ever been extended, I'm sure that the tribe would have sent qualified individuals to weigh in on their opinion in those situations. I have a couple more questions. That I've gathered up since our last time talking. Has there been any updates on that CARES Act that you last talked with us about, the on the federal level, about those kind of monies that come in the form of aid to tribes? Has there been anything that is trickled down to the Muskogee Creek Nation? And if so, how is it being utilized to help benefit the citizens in this time?
I think the last time we talked, we were talking about the the tribes having an issue with the ANCs being included.
Mhm.
Since that chat, there hasn't been too much movement. I know that there's been documentation leak at the highest level, and that's something that just like any of the other tribes, we're not happy with. We hate to see that, and it's unfortunate. And it just is, sadly, it's just a continuation of things that you see from a federal to a tribal relationship that just we're just missing the mark still, and
Mhm.
you wish that wouldn't continue. You'd like to see it changed. We hope for change in the future, but all we can do now is deal with things that come up like this right now and here and now, and move forward and try our best to consolidate our efforts. And that's what we've done with the Intertribal Council. We sent a letter, of course, to the Treasury, as I mentioned to you guys earlier, but also, um, we're seeing a little bit of movement in the Paycheck Protection Program. Not really on our side, but more on the healthcare side. I can't really talk about anything in finalized terms with that. But it's just nice to see that there's at least some parts of it that people are looking at, paying more attention to, shedding light on. That maybe it's kind of an imperfect rollout, and that there will be forthcoming bills maybe that can address some of the shortcomings of the COVID
Sure.
3 bill, which is what we're calling the CARES Act. Yeah, that's about all I can say on that front right now.
When you touched on that data breach a little bit, and that kind of got some major headlines recently, can you kind of describe that, like that, for those who might not be aware of what happened, and if we do know the extent of that data breach or not? There was from what I understand, the story was released with Indians.com, I think, and some data from the tribes collaborating with the federal government, and that information was somehow um, compromised.
Yeah, and that's something that whenever you're dealing with the government to government relationship, you just hope that when we're working hand in hand, that the things that we have to get done in those negotiations, things like that, You just hope that it kind of stays in house until we can get things done. Um, so, there was a great story on Indians.com. Broken Promises is what it was actually titled, which I thought was, wow, as somebody that used to write headlines, that's definitely an eye catcher.
Hmm.
Um, and in that story, you see that people are ticked off at the unlawful release of information. Um, and really, the Southern Ute tribe jumping in, demanding an investigation into the leak. There are a lot of tribes out there really unhappy. If you look at it, um, it's a a responsibility of trust, and that these tribes have to know that they're able to work with and get things done on a federal level, without having to worry about, like I said, a breach of trust. And that's what it all comes down to. Um, Treaty responsibilities, trust responsibilities, and this policy fight is something that's, thankfully for us, it's attracted the attention of powerful members of Congress, and as well as national news, things like that. And it's just kind of you wondering how this happened in the first place. So
Yeah,
I don't,
definitely sounds like there's some processes that were not put into place, at least for protecting the information or something like that. I have another question about federal funding for in the wake of like COVID-19. Tribes, everyone really is incurring humongous expenses to keep operations going, to keep people safe, to keep health workers safe. Have we had any kind of relief in terms of, monetary relief for the tribe coming from the federal level to help us out in those situations? And how
well, we
is
oh, go ahead. No.
Oh, I was just going to say, and how is this like ongoing wrangling of this virus unfolding for the tribe? Can you just give us an update, or generalized update?
Yeah, yeah. So right now, we haven't gotten any money actually in, from the federal government in the CARES Act, anything like that. It's still kind of
Mhm.
being discussed as far as like disbursement and where, and we're still fighting for, actually, to be heard on where we think this should go. That the fact that just because we are a tribe that relies and really, hangs our hat on the gaming industry. That
Sure.
doesn't disqualify us as a legitimate business or a business that qualifies for relief or anything like that. Um, so those are still discussions that are being had right now. The dollar amount just, it's not here in hand, anything like that. So we're eager to be able to, kind of get that and be able to plug in some areas where we think it's most needed. As far as, action wise, had a really good chat yesterday with the tag agency. We get a lot of revenue from new car tags, things like that, in our tag agency office. And one of the things we wanted to do is kind of bump down. They've only been able to operate, in a, mail-in, system, for a few weeks now. So we started rolling people back in at the tag agency, and we put up partitions, safety but barricade. Basically asking people to come in, and make a mask just as much a part of their required documentation as a card, your insurance, everything like that. You
Sure.
also have to have a mask, things like that. And we put up, glass with the, sort of like a bank teller set up now at the tag
We're kind
agency.
of
If you guys
seeing
haven't been
those in
over there,
grocery stores.
yeah,
Anywhere there's a clerk who's going to be standing face to face with
yeah,
somebody, they're having like a
sure.
protective kind of shield in
Sure.
case.
We got protection shield up there for those workers. We've cut down the time, of the consultations, in half, trying to then double our intake each day. So we've done some really good things down there at the tag agency. But again, this is another example of Chief Hill going and actually talking to the boots on the ground, to the people that work there, that know better than anybody else how their departments work and how things flow through there. So he's
Mhm.
trying to take that input, take that feedback, and, kind of pick and choose where we could place this. Where maybe we do this here. It's a little more effective. So that's something we've been doing this week. Also, talking to, food distribution again, social services, on a lot of the things that they're shoring up in their programs, and a lot of things that they'd like to share as far as the new things that they're doing, or maybe some changes that they've done to their programs, things like that. Just getting that information out. Um, and like I said last week, we also, shared the great things that they're doing at the with the distance learning site, the platform, the website that's available now from the Department of Education, because that's a big part of this is the distance learning and how it's affected our students. So
Mhm.
those are all kind of things that have been done kind of in the last week, that we're kind of focusing on while we still kind of keep one eye on this virus, one eye on our casinos and how that's going to play out, and our employees and how that's going to play out. And so it's all part of this big, um, I guess you could say, just multitasking effort that's like
Mhm.
nothing I've ever seen. So
Well, in the wake of all that's going on and with people home and everything, it seems like with the way the state legislature is working, it's kind of nice to have extra eyes right now to just peg on some things. But
yeah,
I did get to visit with some folks about that online learning platform, and I was speaking with Sarah Price about it in an interview, and I'm getting ready to unveil a story on that. But
oh
she says
good,
at this time that our students are spending at home just prolonged this summertime. They have an extra long summertime, it's almost like, and that there's so much of that retention that's like lost during the summertime. So to have an extended long summer, it's kind of critical to kind of provide some platform for students to be engaged and to be practicing those skills so that they don't come into their next school year behind. Um, I wanted to kind of ask, and this is just kind of a question I thought of as we were talking here. How is this is the time when our tribes are putting together their budgets, our departments are piecing their budgets together, their budget proposals and things like that. How is that playing out? And this time of, you know, distance and remote work and stuff like that. Have you heard of any progress, any snafus that we're going to have to deal with?
yeah, that's one of the things that Chiefs definitely wanted to do is get out in front of the 2021 budget, because we do expect cuts and the necessity to look at that and kind of make some decisions here and there. So we've already been calling in Clay Darnell, our controller, Kathy Guthrie as well with him in our finance department, sort of saying, okay, uh, here's what we're talking about, here's what we want to talk about, and then Clay giving feedback as to saying, well, here's some things that I've looked at, here's some things that I've looked at as well, here's kind of what we're projecting, things like that. So we're doing that now in March, April, which is good because it's not good because of what we're having to look at it for, but it's good in the fact that we're so far up ahead of it. And normally, we probably wouldn't be starting to take a hard look at 2021 budgets for even a month or two, down the road. So I'm looking at it now and kind of getting things ready. Um, Definitely looking at some of the areas where we might see some changes for next year. We're asking all of our directors and managers to kind of talk with their staffs, talk with their people, and kind of get an idea of some places where, hey, we don't have to do so much here. Maybe we don't have to do so much here, and see where we can do our part to kind of cut that budget down where it's manageable.
Are we far enough into that budget crunch that is there a magic number of like where we're shooting for to kind of stay in this zone? Have we gotten that far into it yet where we can say, oh, we need to operate at 5% less or anything like
Yeah,
that?
we don't have a
Is that
number yet, just because we still don't know where we're at as far as revenues lost and all that good stuff. So whenever we
okay?
have an opportunity to kind of take stock of sort of okay, so we now have an opportunity to look at where we're at revenue loss wise, and when we open again, anything like that, those questions are still yet to been answered. So that's why kind of we still don't want to throw out a number just because we're not sure yet. We know that there are some possibilities and some numbers, but not at a point to where we feel comfortable releasing them to the public.
I see my like the little timer warning. Oh, I think we got another question.
Yeah.
Jason, do you know of any?
I don't
Uh,
think that. Okay, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was going to try to reframe that question. 8A small businesses. Is there any relief funds for them, and as part of the as a part of the pandemic response? Excuse me. I'm sorry.
I would imagine that they're asking about from the federal level, just because I don't, the tribe isn't doing any small business relief from the tribal's perspective. But that's kind of what I'm talking about in that PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. Sorry, and those SBA relief funds and efforts and everything like that. That's kind of why we're pushing so hard for that. We're not there yet, so there isn't any good news there yet. But we're looking into that, and they should be though eligible just like any other SBA eligible businesses and or minority owned businesses out there that will have access to those funds. From
So if
our
I'm
perspective, that's why we're pushing so hard for those businesses when we make these when we send these letters where we see, hey, some of these businesses are falling through the cracks, or some of these businesses aren't listed here as far as eligibility goes and everything like that. So that's why we're fighting hard for that.
to make sure that those small businesses are also included.
Yep.
I think my last question really is, I see the timer warning kind of going off there a little bit, but we keep, as we were going into COVID-19, we were hearing the talks of the task force and how it was piecing together the plan for us to operate. We've watched the national conversations talk about reopening economies, and then we've seen the president allow that to be the decision of the governors, and then with the restrictions of like it has to be 2 weeks or something before of steady decline or something. Do you have any insight on where we are as far as the tribe reopening full term or full capacity?
Yeah, we're keeping our eyes on the numbers just like everybody else. We want to see a peak, and then we want to see numbers start to come down before we start to entertain anything remotely close to anything that looks like a reopening. We may
Yeah.
be bringing more essential staff back in the coming weeks as we start to see some improvements, some changes, and everything like that. But before we open anything, we definitely want to see a peak and then coming down from that peak. And so we're looking at those numbers daily, and still with our
And
number
Oklahoma
one
is still
priority.
climbing.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
looks like
Oklahoma's still
it's
climbing.
still,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's no surprise. We were one of the last ones as far as telling everybody to get inside and get
Mhm.
serious about this. So it makes sense that we're still climbing and that we're still one of the last ones that have seen a peak. So
Mhm.
that's frustrating. That we sent a letter to the governor urging him to make a shelter in place proclamation. That still hasn't been done. And so we're seeing the effects of I think maybe the reason we're a little bit further behind is because we haven't been one of those states that kind of got real serious about it from the top down.
Mhm. And I think too that some part of it is going to be due to the fact that like Oklahoma is rural and those kind of, I've been tracking some of this data just for the Muskogee Creek Nation counties, and then we see some counties that just now had one case reported. So
Hmm.
when you get into these rural settings, it does kind of work at a different timeline than say those big metropolitan cities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They had a peak very early on, and they might have they might be still dealing with it, or they might be on the back end of it. We are still on that up uptick for Oklahoma, it looks like, and it's good to know that the tribe is keeping an eye on that and keeping everyone safe and at home. Do you have anything that you'd like to add before we go, Jason?
No, just protect our people, stay at home, and we'll keep you updated on the tribal side. We'll keep you updated as best we can. And for now, the chief wants people that are home on administrative leave to be sheltering in place. This isn't a vacation. You're to be at home if you're not absolutely essentially needed elsewhere. And that's all there is to it. We just want to encourage everyone to wear your mask in public, stay 6 feet apart, stay at home, protect
All
our
right.
people.
Well, thank you so much for making the time each week, and we'll see you next time.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Angel. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks.